Thanks to a TikTok trend that went viral, we've all come to the realization that, guys, we're not alone. Everyone seems to think about the Roman Empire quite often. Why wouldn't you? It's fantastic. But I have to ask, gentlemen, please stop thinking about the Roman Empire so often. Okay? There are better things to think about. The Roman Republic, the true bastion of freedom against autocrats like Kaiser. We must stand up for the rights of the citizenry and uphold true virtue, not the whims of those in charge with the power of the backing of the military. Wisdom shall prevail. And honestly, I am thankful to the TikTok trend because it makes this going to be actually maybe a popular video. You clicked on it. I hope you're going to enjoy what I have to say here. Under normal circumstances, I can't imagine why an average person would want to hear some author talk about Cicero from 2,100 years after the guy died. Because he's not the most famous Roman, but he is just kind of like in my list of people to go through because he is pretty famous. He's a contemporary of Caesar. Was one part of the conspiracy that killed him. Very long history of being a lawyer, consul, caesar, however you pronounce that, into a politician in the Senate. Was active during the Civil War and so on. You name it. The dude lived through one of the most famous periods of Roman history and was firmly on the side of the people, of the Republic, not allowing dictators to take control and infringe on the rights of the people. He was also a bit of a Stoic philosopher. Maybe not the best written, best arguments I've heard for Stoicism. It probably falls to Marcus Aurelius, for sure. But, as an author and just as a guy with interests, the Roman Empire and the Roman Republic are infinitely fascinating. The way they play into it and the fact that they're so similar to today, regardless, because we're still people. We still have the same shortcomings and flaws and issues and desires and family and so on. You name it. It is still fascinating 2,000 years later. That's why I pick it up. And I look for the reasons that it can help me out because I think if you're going to be writing fantasy, like I write an epic fantasy available for free on Royal Road. And I'll have that link in the description. You have to study actual civilizations of the past, the way things used to work, the way people used to behave and think about things. And like you definitely don't want to just base it on fantasy stories. I'm sure if you've read enough, you've clearly found a story where the author doesn't understand history, doesn't understand reality, and they're just working off of tropes that they've picked up third hand from other people that are just rehashing ideas through literature, and it's just bad to do that. Always, please, writers, when you're doing research for a story, try to go to the source. Try to actually tap into reality and human nature and you name it. And that's one of the reasons that studying actual history is so great. Because, like, for example, this collection, which is part of the Penguin Classics, and for the record, I kind of hate the translator because he just outright says that, yeah, sure, so Cicero was the foundation of, like, the ideal grammar and prose of Latin that was taught for hundreds and hundreds of years to the medieval period. However, it doesn't really work in English, so I'm just not going to bother trying to make the prose sound good. I'm gonna maintain the content, but just kind of read like, typical journalist trash, to be honest. That's how this got translated. I understand that there are fundamental differences in the structure of Latin and English that make it incredibly hard to bring like the structure and the poeticism and the stresses from Latin over to English, because Latin can rearrange the words and it has the conjugations of the words that denote their function in the sentence, whereas English is largely dependent on order of the words. But still, I was disappointed for what was supposed to be one of the most well-spoken Romans ever, and certainly one of the most recorded Romans and able to be studied. But that's the nature of translation, right? English is a very crude language compared to some of the more old stuff. We have more concepts in the English language. We can discuss more things because we're simply more advanced. And there's larger wealth of knowledge and language, and you name it. But moving on. This collection opens with some of his letters, some of his speeches from various court cases that he had, such as against Varys, which is him I believe this is basically his opening argument in a corruption court case against the governor of Sicily, if I recall correctly. Pretty sure it's Sicily. Moves into some of his letters where he's discussing privately the issues and going ons and with like politics and life and the Civil War and so on. There is a huge chunk in here, the second Philippic against Antony. This is after Kaiser has been having stabbed on the Ides of March. And I swear this is just like 80 pages of calling Antony a horrible degenerate ruining the nation of Rome. The fact that this is actual history with some of the most apparently abject levels of degenerate corruption you could possibly imagine really gives a new layer of context of what is a believable antagonist in a lot of ways. Sometimes I've encountered characters and stories where you kind of look down and like, that couldn't possibly be true. You couldn't possibly have a nobleman just overtaxing his people this much so that he can be fat and just surrounded by prostitutes and wasting expensive fat and sugar-filled food. And then it's just like, well, here's court cases about that exact issue. So it always gives good fodder. And this collection by Cicero ends with two of his more political treatises on duties and on old age. But like I say, if you want to read Stoicism, I'd recommend Meditations way before this. If you've already read Meditations, sure, whatever. Expand your reach. Just do a compare and contrast. See how it works for you. Personally, I think that the arguments by the Stoics usually kind of presuppose themselves because they just say, oh, well, you should behave this way because it's the right way to behave, and the reward for doing it is the fact that you're doing it the right way. It's not exactly the most convincing people who aren't already convinced. But I think this is a lovely addition to my nonfiction collection, basically in my historical research. I don't necessarily know where this is going to end up in my writing, but I think about the Roman Republic quite often. I think plenty of other people do too, because it's cool. What do you want? What the hell do you want me to say? I don't necessarily recommend this translation, but he's an interesting historical figure. Don't overlook him when you look to the past of, oh, well, I really want to read about Aristotle and Alexander the Great and Julius Caesar and who else? Here, Cicero, politician, well written, well spoken, highly recorded, highly studied. Give him a look if you want to expand your Roman knowledge. So then, like, subscribe, let me know in the comments below your favorite Roman. And you can't name anyone that I've already named in the video.